Hello everyone and welcome to Who Wore It Better, the weekly segment in which I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Well, TLC is officially in the rear view and right ahead in the windshield is a roadblock. Raw kicks off with Seth Rollins calling out Triple H. I'm glad somebody remembered Triple H was involved in all this thing. He talks about the consequences that were involved with breaking up the Shield, but he doesn't seem to show any kind of remorse or growth from his actions. That's one of the biggest problems I have with Seth Rollins' face turn, is that his character is essentially the same as it was when he was a heel, but he has shown no real growth as a character, no real learning experiences from what he went through. The fact that he's still complaining about Triple H betraying him, but can't see that this is exactly what happened when he broke up the Shield. Kevin Owens even pointed that out in the opening promo. It kind of reminds Steve Austin was the same character when he went from being a heel in 2001 to turning face again after Survivor Series that year. He was the same character, but he didn't go and call out people in promos for stuff that he himself did as a heel. Seth Rollins in this promo was making fun of Kevin Owens for getting Chris Jericho gifts. Seth, you just last year gave J&J Security Apple Watches and you gave Kane a Hawaiian vacation. You're the last person to be calling people out for giving anyone presents. Kevin Owens announcing a few matches were made as those gifts to Chris Jericho. One of them was Seth Rollins taking on The Big Show. It was kind of actually a welcome surprise to see The Big Show come back after being gone for a pretty long time. He's looking leaned out, looks a little bit older and more disheveled with the beard, the age is starting to show there. But I think, it's cool to see him. I think if he keeps making these sporadic appearances, I think it's a good thing for him in the long run. This match pretty much was Seth Rollins bouncing off the Big Show in a variety of different ways. I loved Big Show catching Seth Rollins out of the suicide dive to the outside, catching him by the throat. That was a pretty cool counter. Big Show takes Seth Rollins down after Rollins is working circles around him in the ring. Kevin Owens gets a little mouthy. Big Show chokeslams KO for his troubles. Then he just presents Owens to Rollins and walks out of the ring, and Show loses by countout, but the damage is done. Rollins gives Kevin Owens the pedigree, exacting a little bit of revenge. So my biggest problem with this whole storyline with Owens and Jericho and Rollins and Reigns is the fact that Rollins and Reigns are just kind of in this weird floating position. They're kind of in the ether right now in the grand scheme of things because all the focus is on the implosion of Owens and Jericho as a unit. Rollins and Reigns are fighting a common enemy, but they're making no attempts at reconciliation. Rollins, again, not showing he has learned or grown from his experiences as part of the Authority and then later being betrayed. He's just the same kind of character he was, and so, him and Reigns are kind of on parallel tracks, but they're not working in tandem at this point. I think if that did happen, I think it'd be beneficial for both those guys in this storyline. Cruiserweight time, you have Jack Gallagher and Daivari earlier in the night, and then you have TJ Perkins and Rich Swann later in the night. It seems what they're doing with the Cruiserweights now on Raw, and it's kind of unfortunate, but I can kind of see what they're doing. They're doing these early teases, and they're doing basically commercials for 205 Live. It's obvious now that the focus with the Cruiserweights on Raw is not going to be that much of a focus. It seems it's going to be there as a commercial, essentially, a preview for what's going to happen on 205 Live. You can see there's more of a storyline brewing between Daivari and Jack Gallagher after the match on Monday. Rich Swann building toward his title defense against Brian Kendrick on Tuesday. P.S. I didn't watch 205 Live, so I don't know what's going on with that show. But yeah, both matches were enjoyable to watch, but yeah, it's unfortunate now that these matches are essentially kind of just live, active commercials for a show later on, that they have no real purpose on Raw, no bearing on the actual overall show, except to advertise. Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. Never again, they said. Oh, how foolish we were to possibly believe them. This was your typical Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn match. You've seen it 100 times in the Indies, Ring of Honor, you've seen it in NXT, you've seen it on the main roster. We've seen this stuff before, but it's always pretty exciting. This match not given quite enough time I think it needed. If you compare it to their Battleground match, that was given the proper amount of time to tell a very convincing, dramatic, emotional story. This one was the truncated version, the condensed version, the Hulu version, you might say, of their match at Battleground. But the story here was Kevin Owens getting hit with everything Sami Zayn had, short of the haluva kick, and still coming out on top, beating Sami Zayn with the pop-up powerbomb. This was my favorite match of the night. Even though we've seen it a lot before, just not for a while, I was pleased watching this match. Then there was the whole tussle in Texas between Mark Henry and Titus O'Neil. They were hyping up this match featuring these two people that have no business being hyped up the level they were. I think this was a rib. I think they just had this idea, wouldn't it be funny if we did this cool tail of the tape graphic with Titus O'Neil and Mark freaking Henry. Like, yeah, it's in Texas, and Henry's a Texas boy, so like that makes sense that he get the pop there. But it just seems so weird. It's just a one and done. The Slam. Mark Henry and Big Show coming back on the same night on Monday Night Raw. Is it 2013 all over again? U.S. Championship match. Roman Reigns taking on Chris Jericho. I thought it was actually a really good match for what it was. I think the storytelling was great, not in just terms of the wrestling, but also the interplay between Owens and Jericho. Owens interfering and kicking Reigns and stuff like that. Very similar spot to a match that Reigns and Jericho had a couple of months ago on Raw. I noticed that it was almost like point for point at certain points in the match, including the Kevin Owens interference. But the big difference was Chris Jericho this time denying Owens, saying, "Get out of here, I don't need you." Ultimately, that cost him the match. So really the story, it's showing more momentum for Roman Reigns going into his match with Kevin Owens, which is good for him. But it's also more of that story between Owens and Jericho. Where is this going to end up? How is this going to end? It's going to end badly, but just like at what point is the plane finally going to crash? The whole Rusev, Lana, Enzo Amore thing going on the last few weeks, such a backwards angle. Like in a right and just world, Rusev and Lana would totally be the faces in this storyline, but we are made to boo them and feel bad for Enzo because of the way like Corey Graves is standing up for Rusev and building Rusev up, because Corey Graves is the heel announcer. So that's the implicit way of saying Rusev and Lana are still the heels in this. So it's okay to cheer for and feel bad for Enzo, who is making all these outlandish, offensive comments to whether or not the woman is married is irrelevant, just like making these disgusting comments to her week in and week out. Because some people really enjoy the storyline as is with no qualms about it. They just go, yay, Attitude Era. The Attitude Era is back. Hooray, sexual harassment. But like, to give you a reference point to the Attitude Era, like when Val Venus and Dustin Runnels, before he was Goldust again, had their feud, like Val Venus slept with Dustin Runnels' estranged wife, but like Val Venus was the heel. Like that's the difference. Like in this scenario, it doesn't make any sense. Or Dean Malenko and Lita. Dean Malenko, this married man, is hitting on Lita, and they have a hotel room thing, and the Hardys beat him up. Like, that's exactly what happened in this situation with Rusev and Enzo and Lana, but Rusev and Lana are the heels, and it's so backward. And again, the segment on Monday night would have been brilliant if the face-heel alignment were different. But like I said, because of the commentary, but the fact that Corey Graves is defending Rusev and Lana, and they are absolutely 100% in the right, but the fact that the heel announcer is sticking up for them more so than Saxton and Cole, it is an implicit way of saying you still have to boo Rusev and Lana because they're foreigners, I guess, and because Enzo's funny, he's got leopard on his, it's just so weird. I'm not a huge fan of the storyline. Then the final segment with Charlotte and Ric Flair and Sasha. Boy, they spent a lot of time building up to that final segment, didn't they? And it was kind of a shitty final segment. It just ended so flat. Like, it was just so predictable. Like, Charlotte coming out and, like, wanting to apologize to Ric Flair. They spent all this time, like, showing flashbacks to last May and the last week and all these different things. And then Ric Flair comes out and they hug, and they go for a hug again, but Charlotte slaps him, and Sasha comes out, and Charlotte beats up Sasha, and by the way, they're going to be facing each other in an 30-man Iron Man match at Roadblock, so hopefully it's the end of the line for this feud, but it was just such a flat way to end the show. I just didn't care for that. SmackDown begins, and it's a Styles in a boot. AJ Styles comes out, not medically cleared to compete on Tuesday night due to an ankle injury he suffered at TLC. I believe what I read was it happened during the Springboard 450 out on the outside of the table. He said in the promo it's not too severe. He's going to be back in a week, he says. What I've been reading, not too big an injury, so hopefully he'll get well soon, and we'll finally see that Styles-Ellsworth match that should have happened on Tuesday night. I just wanted it to happen to get it over with. Admittedly, Ellsworth came out and was actually pretty funny when he was on the mic saying, oh, Styles is ducking him and everything. But Ambrose coming out and just dropping Ellsworth the Dirty Deeds was great. I kind of wanted to see that thing happen all night, where it's essentially just like Ellsworth walking around selling, and then Ambrose spends the whole night just beating him up. I thought it would have been hilarious if they did that, but maybe that's for another week. Night of rematches begins, the tag title match as Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt defend against the people they beat for him at TLC, Heath Slater and Rhino. This is a good match, a good rematch of both teams. Wasn't any better or worse, in my opinion, than what they had at TLC. Maybe even a little bit better. Did hold my attention just a little bit more. I did like the new double team setup that they had to finish, the Sister Abigail tossing into the RKO. I also like the fact they've updated the graphics, the jump scare graphics, with not just Bray Wyatt, but also with Randy Orton. Finally good to get him involved in that thing as well. So maybe they're gonna, they're gonna hold on to this team a lot longer than they did Y2AJ is all I'm saying. Carmella versus Natalya. This is the second week in a row Carmella has had a match scheduled, cuts a promo saying, before my opponent comes out, and then something happens where the match doesn't really happen, doesn't really take place. Carmella with the oh-so-topical Tanya Harding reference, talking about how Natalya allegedly beat up Nikki Bella. So yeah, Natalya comes out and they have this whole chase scene, and Natalya runs into Nikki Bella, and then there's this super awkward, like, it's not true, but really just bad acting by everyone involved. I still think Natalya isn't the one who did it. We're going to find out who actually did it later on. And then later the night, Nikki Bella had this really weird segment where it's like she talked to some little girl about something. I blacked out. I didn't really care. The Ascension versus the Hype Bros in their Best of 700 series. When I talk about how repetitive and how predictable the tag team scene is on SmackDown right now, these two teams are kind of the personification of that. I don't have much to say about the match itself. The Hype Bros go over like they do against the Ascension, but I was kind of thinking in the middle of the match, like, am I weird? Maybe this is me being crazy here, but like, I kind of want to see Mojo Rawley as a singles competitor again. Like, he kind of bored me in NXT, but like, I think he's got like his own thing going on. He's finally kind of gotten into the groove of his character. I honestly would like to see the Hype Bros break up and Mojo Rawley do his thing as a goofy, kind of hyped up face on SmackDown. I think the mid-card could use Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley in singles action, not at the expense of their tag team. I think they need tag teams on the scene, but like, once they get some more teams, maybe they can break them up and do something with it. I think the world is ready for Mojo Rawley back in singles competition. Let me know if I'm crazy. The Miz TV segment with Dean Ambrose, more of this trend of the heels on both shows, like saying and doing things that are 100% correct. Like the Miz correctly calling out Dean Ambrose and the fact that he was using and manipulating James Ellsworth for his own personal gain to get at AJ Styles. It's like what I said a couple of weeks ago, comparing the whole James Ellsworth storyline to the Eugene storyline. The fact that in the Eugene storyline, Triple H, the heel, was abusing Eugene, but here in SmackDown with the James Ellsworth thing, Dean Ambrose, the face, is abusing Ellsworth, and now it's finally coming back to bite Ambrose in the ass. Then The Miz gives Dean a participation award because the whole concept of participation trophies is hot in the news right now. I love the fact that at the top of the segment, The Miz called out the fans for not saying "you deserve it," and then the fans chant "you deserve it" for the participation award. I thought that was the funniest part of the night for me. I popped for that one. Then Daniel Bryan comes out and makes an Intercontinental Championship match in the main event. The Miz to defend against Dean Ambrose. Should be fun. The night of rematches continues as Baron Corbin takes on Kalisto in singles action. I saw the new entrance for Baron Corbin. It's not the flutter. I liked the all red everything when Baron Corbin made his entrance. I get the idea it's the end of days and so it's a very apocalyptic look in the background, but I like the flutter of red when his music hit. I thought that was, I'm sad to see that go. This match, again, it was a short and sweet thing. The Baron Corbin rule: beat you once in the pay-per-view, beat you even worse in the rematch the next night on SmackDown. I will say, and I don't think I've said this enough, I do really enjoy watching Kalisto wrestle. When he does his whole flurry of offense, the high flying, bouncing off the ropes and doing all that kind of stuff, I think that's the most fun 30 to 45 seconds of wrestling of the night, is seeing Kalisto do all, making his good lucha thing. God damn it, woo. I think I want to see more of Kalisto doing that. He really should be on 205 Live. Up next is ALEXABLISS. That spells Alexa Bliss is here. Alexa Bliss comes out with the championship, gets the big pyro coming out for her championship celebration. She says on the mic that she proved by beating Becky Lynch, she proved that happy endings don't exist, which is kind of a weird thing to say because, like, you win the championship. Doesn't that mean you got a happy ending? I thought it was a little weird. Becky Lynch comes out and interrupts, and she says she's not happy and she wants a rematch, and they tease it, and then they don't get it. And so I guess we're going to have to wait and see where this goes. Main event time as The Miz defends the Intercontinental Championship against Dean Ambrose. This was the page I had from my notebook about the match. You can see it is blank. Not that it was a bad match. It was a fine match. There's nothing remarkable about it. Nothing made me go, oh wow, that was amazing. The finish was James Ellsworth coming out and costing Dean Ambrose the match, accidentally, whatever. But the heel turn for James Ellsworth, it's moving right along. The heel Ellsworth train is chugging along out the station. There's no stopping it now. But my whole thing with James Ellsworth as a heel is it doesn't make anyone look good, because obviously Dean Ambrose looks like a complete moron in all this, having been betrayed by this guy who he befriended, this kind of like sad puppy story. AJ Styles, like, he looks okay because he got to retain the championship, but like, getting help from Ellsworth doesn't help his credit at all. And then with Ellsworth himself, like, he's been booked like this complete buffoon up to this point. He does not look convincing. And again, I'm sure in real life he can wrestle just fine, but he's being booked to look like an idiot. So unless he reveals, like, surprise, I actually can wrestle my ass off, or he becomes a manager, I don't see much of a shelf life for a heel James Ellsworth. It just doesn't make sense at this point. I feel they've put too many of their eggs into the Ellsworth basket, and now the Ellsworth basket heel train is moving out of the egg train station, and my metaphors are getting all mixed up, but I think you get what I'm saying here. Time now for me to decide who wore it better, Raw or SmackDown. This was tough because neither show really brought their A game, in my opinion. Like, both shows had some good stuff, but both shows also had a lot of questionable stuff that I didn't care about very much. I think ultimately I have to go with Raw on this one. I think that I like the matches they had a lot more, even though there's some squashes. Owens and Zayn was great. Reigns versus Jericho was a solid match, told a great story. SmackDown had Ambrose and Miz, and that was fun, but really that was the only match that really stood out. Everything else is just kind of like, it was kind of there. Ascension versus Hype Bros. We've seen that a million times. Baron Corbin and Kalisto, we just saw that. The tag title match, we just saw that at TLC. At least Raw has a little bit more forward momentum going with their main event stuff. I enjoyed the Cruiserweight matches on Raw, and what can I say? I even popped for when the Big Show came out. You know, absence makes the heart grow fonder. What can I say? I enjoyed seeing the Big Show again after not seeing him for a long time, and he served his purpose well. He didn't like dominate too much. Like, he was just there, and it was fun. SmackDown's just in this weird holding pattern right now. It seems like all of their angles are still maintained from like Backlash No Mercy days. It's just crazy to think about. Like, that's why my mind was thinking, going, oh boy, wouldn't it be nice if Mojo Rawley were a singles guy? Oh, wouldn't it be cool if Kalisto were a part of the Cruiserweight division officially? Like, SmackDown needs to be shaken up. And I'm not saying Raw is doing 10 times better. They're doing just enough better for me to put them on the winning side on this week's edition of Who Wore It Better. So again, like I said, neither show is perfect, but as far as holding my interest and giving me stuff that I actually want to see develop, like the Raw this week did it for me. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comment section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, including the shirt I'm wearing right now. You can't see it under the jacket, but it's the latest t-shirt that was designed by Dan Madeline for the t-shirt design contest. Check it out. That's all for this week on Who Wore It Better. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.